Welcome to the Changing the Terms podcast. I'm your host, Mike Klein. In this series, we're going to meet some of the world's comms disruptors. These are people working in and around communication who are really changing the game, challenging old assumptions, acting on new ideas, and demonstrating a willingness to share those ideas. Today's guest is no exception, Ambuj Dixit. In life and in the corporate world, communications is the bedrock of everything, meaning everything. Two human beings, two friends, two colleagues are able to pursue anything together only because the process and activity of communication exists, and only together we grow. These are the words of Ambuj Dixit. Being a believer in human potential and its realization, Ambuj has shaped a career of over 19 years, pursuing domains that shape people deeply: leadership development, internal communication, and employee engagement. Especially in the timeline of humanity where we are today, a big responsibility lies with the businesses and leaders to enable humanity to transition into the future. Running a communications agency called ThoughtCom to play his role and contribute to shaping the future, Ambuj considers himself fortunate to have the support of many people on his journey: clients, teachers, colleagues, friends, and family to enable the vision. Welcome, Ambuj.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be there on the podcast today with you and share my thoughts on whatever I feel I've been able to gather, learn, and share with the world overall. Thank you. Thank you for giving the opportunity. It's really a special privilege.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Before we talk about India specifically, what do you see from your perspective as the biggest opportunities and challenges facing organizational communicators around the world?
Right. So, Mike, this is a very crucial question. While this is something that relevant for everybody, but I think we are in a very special moment in time and history of humanity, and that is where we are amidst transition. The world is amidst transition. If you see geopolitically, geoeconomically, businesses, on one hand there is a lot of turmoil in the geopolitics, on the other hand there's a lot of turmoil in the technology. The cultures, the countries are coming closer, the cultures are intermingling, the people are intermingling, the businesses are going global and in different cultures, different companies. So I think we and on top of that we never had so many channels of communication that we have today. We never had so many expressions that we have today, and I think broadly we are overburdened with it. So there are challenges, yes, and a lot of challenges that we as humanity have not traversed before, in terms of activities or the way it's coming to us today. So there is a special opportunity because in every challenge there's an opportunity, but we have to be very proactive about it. So that is where, in my view, when I was reflecting on this, the first challenge that the global communicators or the organizational communicators are going to face is the distraction that is there, that is robbing people of their own efficiency and growth. In a way, it's like, while we know the ill effects of being hooked on to your laptop, to your mobile phone, to all the social media channels, and through that all the conditioning and different ways of being receiving the message, and not being able to figure out what exactly is the right source of message for us. I think that is somewhere actually becoming a big distraction. People, if we talk about organizational communication, no, the only problem is not that if people are on phone a lot of times, or are not or kind of diverting their mind away from work. Big challenge is also that they are getting a lot of messages which might reduce the applicability of company, what the company wants to say. Companies will have to work even more harder now to actually ensure that what they want to say, the values, the culture, how to work together, actually seeps down into people's way of working and they adopt it. That is a huge challenge today. It was not so much 20 years back. Thus, which means that the huge opportunity and the challenge also lies in aligning the workforce. So, arriving from that aspect of distractions that we have too many, It also means that now our job is to actually align the workforce on a continuous basis. We just cannot take it for granted that people will be aligned automatically, especially when there is so much of change. If there is so much of change happening, which means we need to make our communication relevant for the change, we need to foresee the change and align our communication strategy and communication thought for it. Are we keeping our workforce ready for tomorrow? Because if we are not, then that same workforce and people are going to, I mean, are anyway continuing. So why not help them continue a better manner? So the other opportunity, another aspect that people have to consider is that they have to look at people as people and not employees alone. And that is where the opportunity of engaging and shaping people's growth journeys becomes very, very important. uh, uh, and internal communications, one part of the internal comms is that, but by themselves, if we assume as communicators that my CEO, my senior leaders would know what communication is, what culture is, how does it get formed, I think it will be premature, and I think it will be unnecessary assuming something which might backfire badly. So I think big another part of communication, organization communication leaders, is to train leaders and actually groom them on communication, groom them on culture dynamics, groom them on power dynamics. A lot of training and grooming is required there. So yeah, so I think it has to go beyond paying the lip service to employee comms, and shift. The focus has to shift towards a lot more intense manner towards employee communication, because ultimately employees are the ones who are delivering the services. And that is where I think, yeah, it's a great challenge, but at the same time great opportunity for those who think it's a great opportunity as well.
You've given me a lot to unpack here, and so I want to try to address some of your points specifically. The level of distraction and the extent to which organizations need to penetrate that distraction. How do you see in your world organizations successfully doing this? What are they doing? How are they doing it? What perspective are they approaching it from?
Right. So I think overall, yes, we. I think the world is still not catching up to this aspect of that there's a lot of distraction, and somewhere trying to figure out what to do about that distraction. People are worried. Yes, people are worried. Companies are worried. Organizations are worried. Leaders are worried in some ways, but at the same time, uh, how are we preparing for it? I think it's yet to be seen, because all of this is so sudden. All of this is so full of change and so sudden. What we are doing in terms of what currently I see happening is that we are aligning, or the companies aligning with the overall trends like snackable content, reinforcing the same content again and again and again and again. Something some Now the another focus that is coming up is on sustenance. You just cannot do some activity and forget about it, or you just cannot do activity or do something after 3 months. The moment now, the aspect of doing something and sustaining it is an added layer, and showing that it's being sustained as well. So one aspect is I'm doing it, the leadership is doing it, the company culture is happening, but now other important aspect is to tell stories. This is very crucial to act, because now, because there's so much of distraction, I need to now, this distraction can only be tackled by something which is shown again and again and in an engaging manner. So storification, or rather storytelling, has entered internal comms in a rather intense way. Now there are.
So you're basically seeing storytelling as a creative form of repetition, essentially.
Yes, one aspect definitely is a creative form of repetition. Another aspect is, when I say stories, stories have to be relevant too. Every People love stories because somewhere it is relevant to them, because somewhere they take something out of it and they feel, oh, you know what, this part of the story is for me. So aligning comms, just like, and this is not new for the communications world, this is not new. In the advertising world, we'll do it more and heavily, very heavily. Now, even now, a little bit of percentage is coming on to the internal comms. The challenge with internal comms is that, and why advertising companies, or it's a little different, because advertising companies think of people as customers. Internal comms, people have to think of people as humans. And the engagement that internal that an employee or the colleague or a person who's working in a company has with the relationship with the company is far more intense and stronger and longer than a product. If I am taking a phone, I don't expect anything more from the phone than the certain features that I like or I bought the phone for. Until it works well, great, otherwise I change it. It is exactly opposite with internal comms. With companies, employees are part of the company. They know in and out of the company. They know everything about the company. So the good, the bad, the ugly, everything is visible to an employee, and that is where the proper storytelling is important.
I mean, you mentioned that this is a really interesting theme. It's something that I've spoken about for years. That the the idea of employee as customer is a very one-dimensional
Yes.
way of describing a multi-dimensional relationship. Employees build the product, they deliver the product. They also talk about the product, they talk about the organization, they recruit for the organization, and if they're unhappy, they will complain about the organization. They will influence in a negative way. And recognizing that employees are basically your most numerous and your least controllable external
Yeah.
communication channel is really a core starting point of doing internal communication intelligently.
Yeah.
um, to what extent are you seeing things like employee advocacy or the role of the employee as a spokesperson coming into consideration in internal comms where you see it?
Okay. There will always be doubters, and there will always be people who would love to jump on every opportunity to take it forward. So I think the big onus lies on creating a meritocracy based culture. So employee advocacy is happening right now. In many ways, it's happening right now, and it's good as well. And we should nurture. The communicators have this opportunity to nurture it. It's going in the right direction, I would say. So I think it's a good step, but at the same time, it's important that we should not lose focus on creating an authentic culture. Authenticity. Authenticity does not say you have to be successful all the time. Authenticity just demands authenticity. You can fail, but building a culture, and that is where that is where different nuances comes into picture. Do I have control in the geopolitical scenario? I don't have. Do I have control on how the people are going to react with respect to new policies that are going to come on? Do I have the control to challenge uh, the existing status quo and grow something from there? Because any new initiative taken by a company, also that's where the change management comes into picture. Like, I want to grow the company, maybe it's a meritocracy based culture. It'll have its own nuances. So you just cannot say, I'll bombard meritocracy. You have to keep on building it. So sustenance and keep on the builder's mindset is the very important mindset today. So I totally believe employee advocacy should be leveraged. But before you leverage employee advocacy, ensure that the somewhere there is a cohesive narration that you are able to support with proof points.
So basically, if you're going to have employee advocacy, it's got to advocate something that's real,
Yes.
because otherwise you're just going to create more disconnect and more problems for
Yes.
yourself. You were talking about the level of control. To what extent are we really talking about control, and we're really talking about influence
So when I say control,
being two separate
yeah.
things?
So when I say control, I now something like, should a company have a policy where it is defined to in what ways can people comment about the company, in the sense, in what ways they are authorized to comment. I think that those are certain policy should be there. But do I control what people talk about? No, I can't, and I should not. But what I should instead focus upon is how can I make the culture more authentic. But that takes time. The challenge again the companies might face today is, if I'm in the rush of making profits, then I will just orient all my narration towards profit, which will, where the message will be the casualty, where the culture will be the casualty. Because culture does not build based on profit, culture builds based on people's spirit. Profit comes from there. And
Would you say that a key element of an authentic culture is consistency between behavior and
yes,
rhetoric,
that's what
consistency between words
yeah,
and
that's what
and
ethics is,
action?
isn't it? That ethics is what you think and what you say has to be same, or what you do, or what you say and what you do has to be the same. So, and that takes time, because what you should understand is, as the platforms and the channels are going more diverse, so is the human mind. I'm bombarding with 100 messages, my human mind is registering all 100 messages, in some in more degree, some in lesser degree, but it's impacting me and I don't know how it's impacting me. So if I, in this chaotic situation that is surrounding the world today, if I expect everybody will just understand the message tomorrow, I roll out the campaign and understood tomorrow, it's not going to happen. And also people will have certain resistance towards certain kind of messages. The idea is not to bombard them, the idea is to continue the walk until it's built.
So I want to shift a bit from the global view of what's going on in internal communication. I'd say that everything that you're talking about is applicable pretty much anywhere in the world
Yes,
these
yes.
days. I want to ask some questions specifically to the Indian context. And when you look at India, it's not monolithic at all. There's different
Yeah,
layers. Even internal
yeah,
comms in
yeah.
India, you've got um, Indian companies operating internationally. You've got international companies operating in India. You've got large domestic enterprises, medium sized domestic enterprises, family owned domestic enterprises. And then you've got the world's largest public sector.
Yeah.
Are there opportunities in all of these areas for internal comms, or are some more fertile than others?
So, broadly, are people getting aware of the need for comms? Yes, they are. Are they are across levels, but how many are actually doing something about is lesser. They are not many in number, and especially so. What happens is, if you're talking about family-owned domestic enterprises, if they are smaller, they handle among themselves. Like they handle what the way natural things are happening. If you ask me who are taking it actively, it is the global organizations, whether it is India-based multinationals or foreign-based multinationals. They are doing it. They are taking it more seriously. Uh, the foreign-based multinational is where the practice of internal comms came into picture, and that is where you will find much more evolved practices, much more evolved way of the approach of communication from the outside in perspective, in the sense something coming from the outside market. But what we have seen is that what they share is not always applicable to Indian market. Like I tell you, there's one very common difference which we see between the comms program that is made by means foreign based teams, like out in the outside market, like in the headquarters, maybe in London or maybe in Singapore or wherever. The key difference is that Indians are habitual of celebrations, while in foreign places or in the other countries, the way of living is very different. Now in India, every month you have a festival, almost. In India, you will find something or the other. So this country is very, very uh, celebration based, and a lot of ways in which they engage these kind of things in their daily practices in life. Hmm. So what happens is that if some so for us, a communication for the company, a communication that does not the meaning of celebration is different, the meaning of joy is different. So the company does not evoke sense of celebration. It is counted as drab and dull, which and that's this is a clear difference I see when I see a communication coming from a foreign market, and it's asked for it to be adapted to Indian market. It doesn't work because you just find it very drab. So this is where the cultures become different. So there is a lot of opportunity that way, but but there are a lot of now that the India is also growing as an economy and the foreign companies or the world is taking notice of it. I see a lot of companies coming into India more and more, and so the need is definitely going to grow up. Both the kinds of companies, the foreign-based company and the Indian-based company, multinationals, both are opening up. One of the challenges that I see in India based companies is that they are yet to become global in their thinking in terms of internal comms. So while they might be headquartered in India, but the big challenge is that aligning everybody to the common to taking comms to everybody is a challenge.
So basically, what you're saying is just as the communication coming from London or Chicago or Singapore landing in India is culturally not always culturally appropriate, perhaps, a bit dull, perhaps a bit condescending, perhaps a bit um, overly practical. Perhaps the perspective the other way around is also an issue, that the Indian approach doesn't necessarily map
Yes,
on that well
yes,
to the
yes.
larger to other cultures as well.
Yes. So I would not say it's
So there,
condescending. I think I'll not say it's condescending, but I'll say there's a different way
okay.
approach. So yes, and I totally agree with you when you say that there's a difference. And so the comms coming out of India to the global market, especially in internal comms, I'm not talking about consumer comms. I'm talking about internal comms. And the coming from the global market to India are, I think there is still some time before it matches. There's a lot of work to be done in that direction, and that is where a lot of opportunity are there for people who want to come from outside and work and kind of look at this market, and people going from here look at the outside market. I think learning is both ways and opportunities is also both ways.
And also, there's probably potentially some opportunity for um, Indian folks to get it to better understand the global
Yes,
picture of internal comms, and for international folks to come to India and work
yes,
with globalizing Indian
yes,
companies.
yes, Mike, and that's why I see your expertise helping a lot of Indian comms people, and I think together a lot can be done that way in this market.
Yeah, and I think that there's probably plenty of global internal comms folks who could really make a difference in the market. And at the same time, I think there's probably some things that you do to engage people and to make people take notice
Yeah.
that could, penetrate the rather dull, oftentimes dull, picture of global internal
Yes,
comms.
yes. So overall, I see that at least the talent in IC in India is quite less. Means uh, IC was not a certain practice until I would say 15 years back in India. Uh, so there are no professionals. So I started my IC journey when I just entered one of the companies I was working with, and I one of the senior leaders who has been my mentor as well. He introduced me to internal comms. At that time, I realized the value that it holds and what actually how much we can how what purpose we can actually purposeful comms we can do with internal comms, because yeah, we are trying to engage people who almost for them they're spending more than half of their lives at workplace. So it's a huge opportunity, and that is where a good opportunity lie, and that's where a very meaningful work towards grooming people. And it's not only internal comps people need to be groomed, leaders need to be groomed as well.
That was something else I took notice of, that you really see leadership communication as being a core element of
Yeah.
internal communication, which is not necessarily a universal view. I mean, in the U.S., executive communication is seen either as a separate entity or as part of external communication, at least as often as not. To what extent is your view of internal communication integrating with executive communication? To what extent is that getting traction?
One, maybe it could be that this is a cultural difference between the US market and the Indian market. But one clear difference, but in India, people expect the higher ups to follow what they say. Otherwise, it becomes a part of, oh, you know what, everybody says it, but nobody does it. Hmm. And then what happens is that you are approaching to culture, approaching to the aspect of culture with half-heartedness. And an internal comms person cannot approach company-based messaging with half-heartedness. For an IC person, it's almost like killing your own profession and killing your own career. Like imagine if I start working as an internal comms professional, uh, doing something which I don't believe in, I will never get out of the best campaigns. I'll never be able to create campaigns and create a narration for the company, and I'll never be able to fix feedback mechanisms which overall take the message of the people to the leadership. So both ways, at least this is the experience we have in India, that people expect that the leadership should be the first enabler of the culture. That is important.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and certainly that's something that organizations elsewhere in the world could learn a lot from, because that's not necessarily a prevalent view. Um, in terms of strategic internal communication, particularly, because I think a lot of what you spoke about is relationship based, tactical to an extent. In terms purely strategic internal communication, what do you see as the biggest opportunities in India?
I think with respect to strategic communication, I think uh, leadership communication number one, cultural audits, cultural comms is along with the cultural audit is the second big opportunity here, uh, and involving technology in comms is the third big part here. I will count if you're only talking about organizational comms. I think these are the three big things. If we have
Well, this is a really interesting split. We talked about leadership counts. We talked about the cultural side. Obviously, the audit piece can add some rigor to it. Can take some of the personality out of the picture, so that these things could be analyzed on their
yeah.
merits. But you also talked about involving technology and comms. To what extent do you see, based on your familiarity on what's going on with internal comms technology globally, do you see India as lagging behind, as holding their own, or as having perhaps more advanced ways of doing this than, say, other parts of the world?
So, Mike, there are certain things that the Indian teams are using, Indian companies are using, like they are using tools like Yammer and Workplace by Facebook. Means there are different intranets are there as well. What is currently and so what a measurement you get from there as well as technology, but overall infusion of technology with respect to the kind of certain. Uh, Tools that we can use for measurement apart from the intranet and these webs these
So moving away from click rates and open
yes. So
rates
I
and stuff
think
like that.
proactive where we involve people to get technology to use technology, I think that is right now that is not happening currently. uh, there are many companies I know who are not, in fact a lot of companies are stuck at the measurement level. They don't have the opening rates of their own emails. uh, so that is, I think, so tech is somewhere moving, aligning, going along, but I don't think, like, we don't have AR/VR based immersions or inductions as well. Like there's a huge opportunity where HR teams or the people can use VR, AR/VR based inductions easily. Augmented reality, virtual reality. Like imagine if you have 10,000 people, or is a 10,000 people strong, 20,000 people strong, you have 500,000 people joining in a day. Instead of taking all the things only at one place, why don't we create VR based simulation based program where actually people kind of experience. We have given these proposals to companies, but unfortunately those never went ahead. But there is a part this way we can be done. So I think tech is, we are going ahead, but yeah, I think we are still getting the messaging and the practices in IC right.
Um, what about AI? What about the extent to which AI is starting to show up either in the way communicators do their work or in the ways organizations are trying to see their work streamlined?
Not yet. What
Okay.
maybe communicators might be doing is that they might be using certain things like chat gpt to write copies or something, but I don't recommend that at all, at all. And that is a wrong way of getting trained also, as I said, because IC is a very young domain, so a lot of talent is still getting groomed. So getting habitual of using AI as an escape way or kind of a shortcut, I think it has to be used intelligently. So AI right now is not being used in a big manner here. Maybe one or two case studies are happening somewhere, but I have not heard about it as yet in terms of an extensive way or somebody who has used AI in a very nice way to actually make things happen here.
So, in terms of the broader acceptance of a strategic and a holistic approach to internal communication, what are the key factors that need to be overcome to make the most of these opportunities?
You mean to say, what are the hurdles that stand in the way of IC for IC to be leveraged well?
Right. And also, you know, what specific things can I see people do or can organizations do to make, to take more advantage of what we can offer?
Uh, I think number one is that leader how should, it's like a chicken and egg game. Like leaders won't understand until you tell them or until you show results, and results won't happen until leaders give chance, like that way. So one aspect I would say is, at many places I see people are expected to do everything. They are doing strategy also, they are taking feedback also, they are doing newsletters also, whatever channels of communication, they are doing campaigns also. Come on, how much can a one person do? So
So you have a lot of teams of one, a lot of
yes.
individuals
A lot
with,
of teams of one here,
okay.
ones and twos, and of course there are not very many agencies also in internal comms that are kind of prepared to take up this load as well. So, but but I think internally, Copcom heads or the leadership should know that observing and actually insight mining in the company in itself is an intensive task. What the internal comms person internally should be having a key role is to mine insights, is to push for the right ideas, is to push for the right efforts, is to push for the right involvement, is to push for the right campaigns and the right priorities, and also aligning the leaders for the right priority. What the person is doing is everything else in, apart from this, because the person is so busy delivering everything at a certain period of time. It's like asking a CMO to do everything. The advertising ecosystem has evolved to involve everything there, or involve different people kind of things there. IC ecosystem is still to evolve, number one. Number two is, I think, using tech. We should give chance to tech and get the basics of the tech right, so that then we can start. And it should, in many cases, if the tech is there, the way to leverage the tech is not there. Like if you go to the if you go to the companies, I'm not talking about IT. If you go to the IT function of the companies and you say, can you give me this detail, they won't have it in many cases.
So they don't have the analytics, for instance.
Something has to be, maybe we need to get plugins, maybe we need to get whatever ways to actually ensure that the tech works. uh, Intranet, for the intranet is something you cannot let it die. And I think another big part, what actually can make a big dent, is having a good content strategy for the intranet, which means involving videos as well. And I think not we are really falling short on the content strategy part. If you have a good content strategy, intranet totally works on content strategy. If you have a good content strategy, intranet will survive. But it cannot be one campaign based, to initiative. It has to be consistent. So as a strategy, consistency is a part of it. So if you are creating certain kind of content, it should be regular, at least for a year. If you are doing some kind of campaign, culture based campaign, it should have pillars which are regular. If our leadership is taking a town hall, then that town hall should be followed up with credible actions, insights, reporting. It should not be that, okay, 3 months back I did a town hall, and after 3 months, oh, we are picking a town hall only after 3 months. What happened in between?
To what extent is there resistance to collecting the insights, or at least making the insights collectible?
So I would not say
I
resistance.
mean, do you have issues like survey fatigue, or do you have resistance among leaders that they don't want to get found out, that kind of stuff?
No. So from whatever work clients we have worked with and we are working with, we are blessed to have people who really look forward to more and more. But so I don't. So you know what? Surveys, yes, surveys might have a lethargy crept in, or other what do you call, indifference crept in. But you can do surveys very smartly. We can actually do random surveys every month. Out of 10,000 people, if an organization has 10,000 people, let's choose 200, 300 people every month, random people. We can do very smartly. We can do surveys for small things. We can involve surveys in initiatives, like we just launched something, a cricket based property, just on the background of the Cricket World Cup. And what we did was, we actually combined the stories of the cricketing heroes with the values of the organization. And we asked people to rate that particular cricket hero on the values of the organization. And immediately we got how many people are associating with a certain kind of value. It's this kind of analytics is almost like it's not heard of in the industry. So there are ways to do it. There are very smart ways to do it. But what I feel is that the internal comms fraternity needs to get strengthened, and a lot of education and training needs to happen in this domain, because the talent is still growing.
Do you think the people in this space have the appetite for that level of education and training?
I think there are people. There are a lot of people right now. I see there's a just day for yesterday. I was checking LinkedIn and I was checking about internal comms professionals, and I saw the number has really kind of really grown as compared to last 3 4 years. If you would kind of search internal comms 4 years back, the numbers would be less. Now even the openings are there. So one part is that, do people have appetite? I always believe there's somebody who loves this domain. That's why the societies work. No, somebody loves art, somebody loves technology. Not everybody becomes an engineer. Somebody loves some. So there is definitely a potential, because especially it is a people based job. If you really want to make a difference in people's life, and honestly, this can make a huge amount of difference in shaping the culture. And culture is one big part that is adding to people's health today. So yes, I feel there is appetite for people. I feel that people want to learn. But I think, yeah, as an industry, something we need to take it up, because if we consider ThoughtCom as one of the leading internal comms agencies, then the onus falls upon us also to do something about it.
No, no, fair enough, fair enough. We need to drive. As leaders in this profession, in this field, we need to drive the appetite
Yeah.
for learning. The learning needs to be sufficiently interesting for people to want to engage in it. And so I totally get that. I was just kind of curious about the extent to which you were seeing appetite in the circles in which you operate. I want to ask a particularly um, local question, although it's not limited to India itself. There are a lot of countries which are seen as, really big targets for business process outsourcing, based on cost advantage, things like that. To what extent is India's continuing cost advantage a factor in the willingness to invest in comms and culture?
So
Is this something that's a barrier, or is this actually something that people are investing in
so I would say it
from
is
that
growing.
perspective?
Sorry, did I interrupt you in between?
Okay. No, that's
Yeah.
fine.
So I would say it is growing, because I will tell you, we have been in the industry for almost 17 years now. The company I am working with currently. Uh, It is growing. If you would ask me for 10 years back, I would have said it's useless to be in to build a kind of consultancy or agency in internal comms. It's and the demand is growing steadily, and actually it's growing not steadily, actually more than steadily. The leaders are realizing that they need some help there. The leaders are open to it as well. The leaders themselves are actually maneuvering through so much of chaos that I feel they need assistance and they are open to it. But there should be talent who is ready to say to for them to say, oh, you know what, hey, I will have a discussion with you. uh, Reason is because an internal comms person is just not an internal comms person. Like how many people in the organization has to think about everything in the organization, especially like when you talk about culture. Not everybody. Product guy will only look at product. A marketing guy will only look at marketing. HR people have the responsibility to look at everything, but at the same time, internal comms is more important because I have to understand how is my CEO looking at culture, how is my CEO relating culture with the revenues, how is my CEO, how is the priority of my CEO with respect to products, what the priority of my CEO with respect to people and products. So basically, an internal comms guy has to be an advisor. He has to rise up to the level of entrepreneurial thinking of what actually would be the priority of my CEO. What will the dilemmas of my CEO? The CEO does not have all the answers. Even the leaders are figuring out all the answers. So if my internal comms person is always looking for answers, he will not get it. Because in this chaotic situation that the world is in, and especially the transition that the world is in, there are no certain answers. So am I able to read it and say, let's frame the message in this manner, or let's align the people with this? And that is one of the big responsibilities of internal comms, because what the change that is coming, it is the responsibility of the HR and internal comms people to align people and get ready, make the company ready for tomorrow.
There's some real gold in what you just said. I mean, let me just kind of throw back a couple of the highlights from the last question that essentially, aside from the CEO, no one else has quite the 360-degree perspective that an internal community, a well-positioned internal comms leader would have. A. B, given the situation in the world, I think what you're saying is that the IC leader really needs to look for questions every bit as much as looking for
Yes,
answers.
yes.
Look for opportunities as well as just simply operations to execute. And that really the focus is on aligning people to do the right things rather than just simply trying to make them aware of things.
Yeah. And the
Is
why,
that a fair summary of what you said
I
there?
think a very nice summary, and I'd like to elaborate on the third part. uh, uh, Trying to stand up for the right thing, it's important because that's what the world needs. I'm not making a philosophical statement here. What I'm making is that anyway the world needs these people. How much can we run the world with, specially, and because we are close by the very virtue of our role, we are close to the leaders. How much can we just be the me toos or the yes mans? Someday the being a yes man will actually kind of make me hit a roadblock, and at that time I would realize, oh, you know what, I have not developed a different way of thinking, and I would have been easily 10 years in the industry, 12 years in the industry, and then to turn back from there and say, hey, you know what, let me start all over again. It's not possible. So why don't I actually groom myself as a person who is actually aligning and actually, and taking the decision for myself as well? Because if I'm not able to stand up for what I think is right, how will I stand up for what the people expect for to be right? How will I actually work with the CEO and say, no, I don't think that is right?
No, I mean that's key, the ability to stand up to the CEO, but at the same time to have gathered enough
Yes.
credibility so that the CEO takes you seriously when you do that.
Yeah. And that credibility will get built when I have taken chances, when I have been through that process.
No, indeed. Um, just want to bring this to a close. This has been an extraordinary
Same here.
conversation. And I just wanted to see if there's anything that we haven't discussed that we'd like to get on the table before we finish.
Uh, okay, let me just think. I think, yeah. Uh, I think we have summarized. We have discussed almost everything. But one message I would like to give is, uh, the industry is getting built. At least in India, I would say that the IC industry and employee engagement domain is getting built. So the companies and the consultants, IC and employee engagement consultants, the companies, the leaders, and the agencies will have to work together to make it grow, and they both need each other's support. So I think, yeah, that's a good way of building. So let's have the builder's mindset, because the builder's mindset is actually to get into it, figure out the way, and go ahead from there. And I think that is what the industry needs. Yeah.
So, a builder's mindset, a 360-degree perspective, a willingness to walk the talk, and the confidence to, to engage with leaders as peers rather than as yes people or
Yes.
subordinates. Would you say that, in a nutshell, that's the key to the future?
Yeah.
Excellent. I really want to thank you for your engagement, your conversation today. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. It has been a great conversation with you and a great learning with from you as well. Following your blog as well, and whatever conversations I've had with you until now, I think they have been very inspiring, and I look forward to learning a lot from you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.